Welcome to Revenue Radio. I'm Stacy Taubman, your host, and I'm excited to have Jessica on our show today. When I came to Denver, Jessica, I don't know if you know this, you were one of the first people I met.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I was so nervous to meet you because I'd heard such amazing things about you, and you've had such an interesting career path. I'd love for you to share a little bit. Well, first of all, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. But please tell us a little bit about your path.
Yeah. And thanks for having me, Stacy. And it's always good to be with you and House of Revenue. So I became an entrepreneur at 24. I was not planning on becoming an entrepreneur, but there was this little thing called the 2008-2009 Great Recession, which I'm sure created a lot of entrepreneurs at that time.
Kind of like COVID.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The Great Recession then too.
So my now husband and I had decided to start a wine business, and we didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. We just thought, hey, be cool to sell wine. We're 24. Like, why not? Right. So we opened up this little wine boutique in Naples, Florida. And you hear all the time that recessions and depressions create a ton of business opportunities.
It really does.
Disney was founded in a downturn. FedEx was founded in a downturn. And our little store, Decanted, was also founded in a downturn. But the opportunity we were able to, jump on was that we got pulled into the really high-end collector's market of wine. So there's
at 24. I mean, that's an interesting world to be in at 24.
Yeah. So like there's wines in this world that sell for not just like people be like, oh my God, $500 a bottle is so expensive. We were selling wine for like $5,000, $10,000. Our most expensive bottle was $25,000 a bottle.
Wow.
And so we get pulled into this world, and now our little boutique in Naples is not just doing business in Naples, but we're doing nationwide shipping. We're doing shipping outside the country, all the way into Hong Kong, into auction markets and things like that.
So you were having to figure out things you had never even thought of at 24.
Yeah. Never even, in the backstory is like before we got into the wine business, like I was like a relaxed Riesling girl. Like I did not drink high-end expensive wine, but this, obviously that opened up my palate and taste. But yeah, so we were figuring out everything from the get-go, and about 30 months into that business, so not that long, not even 3 years, my husband and I were just burnt. We were just so burnt out. We had a retail operation, so we're working retail hours. We built the business to be very dependent on us. The client relationships were dependent on us. Now we're shipping across not just 4 time zones in the US, but we're working out of like London and Hong Kong, and it was just nonstop.
Yeah.
So we hit a major point of burnout about 30 months in, and we were actually vacationing in Aspen out here. And I woke up one morning, I'm like, I'm done. We're selling the company. Like no thought, no planning, nothing. I knew that at some point we were going to sell Decanted. Like I started when I was 24, I was like, I'm not going to sell wine the rest of my life. This was kind of like a pause in my career.
Sure.
But I had never made those plans. But that day I woke up and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Good for you though, for calling it, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs face burnout to the point of affecting their health.
Yes. And it was really starting to get to that point. And so we listed the business. We were fortunate that we were able to get a full price offer and close that business within 60 days, which I now know my career is not typical.
Not at all.
But that really opened my eyes to mergers and acquisitions for small businesses. And I felt like there was a big opportunity there. I felt like we weren't really well represented or understood as a small business. And there wasn't a lot of resources for us. So that led me into my career path now that I've been doing for over a decade, where we help businesses exit, but also specifically my niche is helping businesses prepare for the exit. So we help small businesses get ready for sale, increase the valuation, and then turn them over to the right business brokerage partner when they're ready to do that exit. So I've been involved in over 750 transactions in the last 10 years. I've worked in all kinds of industries, and, at the same time have built my own practice, now an 8-figure business.
Right. So. Well, you guys can see why I asked Jessica to be on the show for Revenue Radio. Being second stage business owners, while they're maybe not quite ready to sell yet, I want to really make sure I'm giving you guys the information. So as you grow and scale your company, you can be really intentional and set your business up for success. So when you're working with these CEOs and really wanting to help them be successful, have that great sale at the end, what kind of things can they do to be really intentional and grow their revenue in a smart way?
Yeah. So, I think it's not just about revenue, but it's also about the structure of the business. And there's our research shows us there's about 8 different what we call value drivers that increase the value of a business and the desirability for sale. But if we really boil it down, there's 2 major things that you can do in your business to ensure that it's sellable at any time for the maximum value.
Ooh, I can't. Only 2, guys.
Yeah,
only 2.
We'll keep it 101,
Okay,
right?
I like it.
The 8 is like more like our second time together, right?
Got it. Okay. Well, I'll just have to have you back
There
on.
you go. So the first one really is we talk about growth a lot as entrepreneurs, but we also have to focus about the profitability of our growth.
Yes.
So this mentality of growth at all costs is something we have to almost erase from our mindset. And instead we need to focus on the bottom of the P&L. So as much as we're trying to grow the business, we should be growing it at a profitable margin.
Yeah.
And typically like with small businesses, you see that anywhere between 5 and 25% net profit margin. But the value of your company is determined by a multiple of its earnings. That earnings number is usually EBITDA. So that is the first thing that you focus on is like, 1, have clean books and records so you can demonstrate what your revenue is year to year, what your profitability is year to year, but focus on the bottom line even more so than the top line.
Well, and I think that's why, I mean, not to talk about house of revenue, but the fact that we're booming because as chief revenue officers, that's a newer position. I feel like I still have people every day being like, what is that role? But I think that that role is so important because it can help with that.
Yeah.
You know, our job is to be good stewards of the capital and to be helping to grow with sales and marketing and customer success, but also the revenue economics of it all.
Right.
And being able to have those conversations and support the CEOs to make those decisions.
Yeah, exactly. It's that like, I think sometimes someone that's sitting in that position, if it's the right person, right partner, they can be hyper aware of what are your margins on each sale. And sometimes I see companies take on more because they want more, but then they don't really even realize or analyze that that client they just took on, they're actually going to lose money on that client, right? And that's a death spiral for a company.
It really is. And that's, and not to beat a dead horse, because I was just talking about this on another podcast, but that's why having a really great go-to-market plan and slowing down to speed up is so important. And how often do we have the luxury of actually slowing down and mapping that plan out?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes like you have to take a step back before you take a step forward. There's multiple clients that we've worked with that, we take a step back, we'll either reduce the size of the business or we'll reevaluate the entire business model before we put in place the next plan to grow and grow profitably and grow in a valuable way. So yeah, the CRO position is super valuable and actually goes into my second point.
All right. I like it.
So the other thing you really need to do is you have to build a business that's not about you as the owner and the founder. So you can sell businesses of any size. You can sell businesses that are solopreneur businesses. But like when you look at the value you get for those types of businesses versus the value you get when you build a sustainable operation that's not dependent on you, that has a leadership team, that has people that can execute things if you decide to leave and go on a 3-week vacation or sell the company to somebody else, right? But the more reliant it is on you as an owner, meaning like you drive revenue, you're the face of the brand, like people do business and they work with you and not the company, the less valuable it is because it's riskier for a buyer to take over that business.
Well, and that transition is so hard, right? You know, second stage business owners, that's why we get called in, because founder-led sales, the transition from founder-led sales to a sales team is such a bumpy transition if you're not getting the support you need. Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen that.
It's such a bumpy transition. It's also the number one riskiest position for a business owner to be in, right? Because
interesting.
When they go to sell, you think about what is a buyer worried about? Like, what is that risk? And the number one fear that buyers have is that when the owner leaves, the customers are going to go away.
Right.
And if the owner is the one that's built those relationships, that's gone out and done those sales, that's, doing the hunting and the farming, and everyone, like I said, is doing business with the owner, that person goes away. And Stacy's like, well, I really liked working with Jess, but I don't know about this new owner thing. Right. And so it is a bumpy road to make that transition to a CRO, to a sales team, but like, it's so worth it when you're still in there and you're able to control the strategy and be part. And then eventually your customers, your marketplace get used to not doing business with you, but now they're doing business with your brand. And that's a huge differentiator. And that's when the value of businesses really start to increase.
Yeah. And I think for second stage CEOs, that can be a time of loss. That's a big transition. I remember when I went through it and I made every mistake in the book because I wasn't ready yet and I didn't have the supports. And while I figured it out, gosh, I think about how much easier it would have been if I had the resources and the ability to bring in fractional supports to help me get there. Because doing it myself, founders are often really good at the selling, but it comes so natural to us. We don't know necessarily why it's working. So then hiring and training people is where I think things start to fall apart. And I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah, it's almost like as a owner and founder, and I see this, my husband's my business partner. He's a great sales guy, him. Stacy, right?
He's great.
But like when he was really leading our sales efforts, he was looking for carbon copies of him, right? Well, my husband, I love him to death, but he's a very unique individual, right? There's only one Al in this world. So to find carbon copies of ourselves, and I see a lot of founders try and do this.
Right.
Like, oh, if they could just do it my way. Well, that's not a sustainable business model versus trying to build a programmatic way, a system that you're delivering your sales. That's sustainable. That's valuable.
And something that's measurable. Right. So we can iterate and change. Right. Absolutely. Well, I think those are really good tips. Keep in mind, those are 2 out of 8. So we'll have to have her back on for the others. One of the things at Revenue Radio we talk a lot about is growth. And there's lots of ways to growth. Lots of ways of growth. You guys like that? There's lots of ways to grow, right? You can grow by expanding your sales team, a new product, but something that I think second stage business owners don't think about enough is growth through mergers and acquisitions. And, I would love to hear kind of your experience and thoughts on good old M&A.
So it's funny. So when we started building our business brokerage and M&A practices, we were just growing organically. And, 3 years in, we're like, why is this so painful and so slow? And then we're like, wait a second, we're in business brokerage. Like we broker M&A transactions for a living. Like, why don't we just buy other business brokerage firms?
And it's weird because at that second stage, we often don't think about it. It's not until you're much larger do you think I could acquire or merge with a company. And one of the reasons I wanted to have Jessica on is I want people to know, wait a minute, no, you can be thinking about it today as a lever to pull in your growth.
So we've grown our whole business by acquisition.
Okay.
And it's been our number one growth initiative. So I mentioned in the 2 tips, right, is that when we're looking at building a valuable business, it can't be dependent on us and it has to be highly profitable. But the fact of the matter is when you look at the marketplace and we look at most of our competitors, they haven't built that business, right? So if we have that formula and we are able to acquire a competitor or a business that's in a similar industry for a lower multiple, lower cost, and then able to put our expertise in that business, we level up our entire organization very quickly. So oftentimes I find that it is cheaper and faster to acquire for growth than it is to do it organically over time. Not always.
I was gonna say that's very counterintuitive because if I'm a company of 3 million, 5 million, I would think, oh no, not yet. I can't do that yet. But it sounds like that's not the case at all.
No, that's not the case at all. And I think also we forget or we don't understand the general marketplace of business sales. We always think like, oh, a business sale is going to be so expensive.
Right.
The average business sells for $375,000 in the US. So there are very small companies that you can acquire anytime. There's also, as a business owner, if you're looking to grow through acquisition in your same industry, there is plenty of financing.
Right.
So the other thing I think we're conditioned is so hard to get money in the startup phase, right? We're like, oh, we're not going to go down that road and we're not going to try and get financing or raise capital. But when you have a stable business and then you go to acquire another, it is, I mean, I can't even tell you how many thousands of % easier to gain financing on those transactions than it is to get startup loans. So it's a recommendation we provide a lot of our companies that are preparing for sale and they're looking to make a significant jump. This is how I define my unicorn exits. When they're like, I want to make a jump from where I'm valued at today to 2, 3, 10 times more.
Okay.
Right. And I want to do that in a short time horizon, less than 5 years. Really the best and sometimes the only way to do that is to grow through acquisition, merge companies together. Now as a bigger company, you're greater than the parts, you're worth more.
And you have economy of scale in many ways. And I think when you're thinking about your go-to-market strategy and thinking about your growth of your company, I really want you guys to have that in your head as one of the potential tactics to take.
Yeah. And there's other reasons for acquisition too that you mentioned. It's not just about growth of revenue. You could do it if you wanted to acquire staff, right? So we've seen a lot of acquisitions in industries where staffing is very difficult to acquire, right?
Yes.
We see it actually a lot in the trade and constructions arena because like the staffing and the labor market's super tight in there as they're facing an aging labor market. So there's a lot of acquisitions going on in that arena.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's one reason also. So growth, staffing, and the third one is to expand your footprint. So
Got it.
If you want to go into another market, you don't want to start from scratch and build from scratch. When my firm, we're based in Colorado, but we went to enter the Dallas market in Las Vegas. We did it through acquisition. We didn't start from scratch. You can also do it entering like not a geographically different market, but like a different service or a different product line that you want to do. So I think just the concept of acquisitions opens our mind as entrepreneurs. It's just, again, it's another lever to pull.
Yeah.
And I think it should be really a major strategic topic we're talking about. Like when we're in our strategic planning every year and we're saying, oh, we're going to grow this product line or we're going to this market, like we should evaluate, is it better to do this organically or should we look for an acquisition instead? And I think that second conversation doesn't happen as much as in these founder-led
I would
boardrooms.
absolutely agree. And I think that's why in those, when you're taking the time to build out a go-to-market and you're doing the research and you're doing the audit and, we even do competitive shopping, right? Yeah. Secret shopping. I mean, you really do need to look at businesses from all different angles and take the time to analyze it and say, which levers are we going to pull and not just start looking for your silver bullet. I can't talk today. Silver bullet, ladies and gentlemen. No, that is so fascinating. And I think mergers and acquisitions is a great tactic, but I also think there's some challenges that come from it. Just give me one or two and how what advice you have, because I think that's where some of you spoke about finance and money and the cost of it, but M&A gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And so without going too in the weeds, I'm curious if there's any advice you would give to kind of wrap up our show today.
Yeah. So two major pieces of advice. There's lots of advice.
I know there is.
But there's two. I'll just keep it simple again, two. So the first is you cannot change a company's culture, right? So I always tell our buyers and sellers, like, if you guys do not get along, if you are just completely misaligned in how you run your businesses, how you understand your industries, those cultures are not going to merge together. So
that's good advice.
A lot of times when you see mergers not go well, it is because of that cultural people piece, right?
Okay.
So when you're looking for a company to acquire, to merge with, you should do it with a company that has a similar culture to yours. It doesn't have to be exact carbon copy. Again, we're all unique individuals, but similar enough and similar worldview, industry view. That's number one. Number two is I tell every buyer this piece of advice, and I think only about 20% of them follow it. When you buy a company, do not change anything about that company for at least 6 months.
Whew, I know that's good advice, but I can see why it's hard to follow.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Even if you're in the exact same industry, right? You don't understand how that company runs, how those people run. And you do it for two reasons. One, you want time to gain knowledge, right? You want to see what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. Maybe they're doing something better than you're doing in your company that you want to take back with you. So you want to learn that first, right? And the second is that you want to build trust among the people.
Yeah.
So again, buyers' biggest fears is that when they acquire a company, customers are going to go away. Their second biggest fear is the employees are going to go away. So if we come in as owners and we start changing all these things, the stakeholders, people don't like change,
no,
right?
They
don't like change. So our stakeholders start looking for other options, and stakeholders can be your employees, your vendors, your customers. So stabilize the company for the first 6 months. Obviously, if there's major issues that you have to address right away, fine.
Put out the fires.
Right. But don't come in, and I tell people all the time, don't be a jerk and start changing comp plans. Like, don't do that. Definitely don't do that. Right. Just learn for the first 6 months before you do everything.
So smart. Well, you have been a wealth of information, such great advice for second stage business owners to help grow their company. Thank you for being on our show.
Thanks, Stacy.